Have you heard about the nocebo effect? You probably heard about the placebo effect, but there's another effect called the nocebo effect. And that could be influencing how you are experiencing pain or really anything in your body. So I'm really delighted to have my guest today, Dr. Cosima Locher. I hope I said that right, Cosima.
Yeah, that was really right. It's great. So nice to be here.
Well, you are a co-author of the book, and I want to make sure I get this right, The Nocebo Effect, When Words Make You Sick by the Mayo Clinic Press. And this book is available now, but it's kind of interesting to think about. So now we've given a little hint about what nocebo it is. But you're also a psychologist, and you've really dedicated your work to placebo, nocebo. So I'm really excited to dive in with you. And so thanks very much for being here today. So my first question is, let's talk about what the nocebo effect is for the people that haven't heard that before.
Yeah, so thanks again, Jen. It's so great being here. So I think the nocebo effect is a very fascinating phenomenon. And it's like the negative counterpart of what we call the placebo effect. So when you think of placebo, you, of course, think about a sugar pill. Well, the sugar pill that is very, powerful. A sugar pill, when you have positive expectations, that can give you powerful effects, although there is just sugar in it. Or, the ritual of being in a good relationship with your physician where you feel like, wow, this is really important for you to get off and rid of pain. Now, nocebo is like the negative counterpart of that. So when you think of a sugar pill and then you have had probably negative experiences in the past and you think, you know what, I took so many pills, it actually never, ever did any kind of difference to me. And you swallow that sugar pill and then it doesn't give you any effect, or the nocebo effect would be you have negative side effects, right? So you feel like, oh God, I have a headache and nausea, or I feel just like this brain fog. So all these side effects and things that come along with something that is inert, we would say the nocebo effect.
Okay.
Then it comes from Latin, comes from Latin like nocere, and it means to hurt, to damage, to do something bad to you. Yeah.
So someone who's taking a sugar pill, instead of having the positive effects, they know what the possible side effects are, and they're having those side effects, even though it's just a sugar pill. It's interesting that in either case, we're really talking about the power of the mind to affect physical changes in the body, right? And the nocebo effect, another way I've heard about it too, is also like from, people have such place such trust in their physicians that if the physician says, for example, you've got this diagnosis and here's the symptoms you can expect, or here's your diagnosis and you have, like in a severe case, you have 2 months to live kind of thing, then that kind of follows through as well. So does that come under your umbrella of the nocebo effect?
Yeah, so the nocebo effect has many different mechanisms, and I have to say we know less than we do with the placebo effect because it's quite new in research not new, but newer in research that we do really try to examine this phenomenon. But you're completely right, Jane. So it's all about saying negative expectations of side effects, but also, oh God, my physician gives me this whole list of negative things that can happen to me. And you start to focus on these things, somatically focus on what is going on in your body. And suddenly when maybe there is just a natural flow, and suddenly you start to focus on the negative part because of, oh, wait, there is this flow, but now I concentrate on the negative peaks because I know maybe I have a headache. So it's also how you focus on your body, how you interpret the signs that you naturally have in the realm of, oh God, this is the negative thing that happened to me. Yeah.
So it's almost like the brain, because we've read it, the mind, I guess is a better word, starts paying attention to that. And so then it seems like it's showing up more. This really kind of draws attention to, as I said earlier, how the mind can actually create physical symptoms, right? Positive and negative. So I think something that people struggle with that is like, is this all in my mind? Am I making it up? So how, you're a psychologist, like how do you help people deal with that aspect? Am I just making this up?
Yeah, so crucial, so crucial. And the thing is, especially with chronic pain patients, so I do a lot of research in that area of chronic pain. And the thing is really that sometimes and often, unfortunately, patients feel very disappointed by their physicians and say, look, I just don't feel understood by what is happening to me. So I did a lot of research in the field of fibromyalgia, where people have these symptoms that somehow cross your whole body and they move around, and it's hard to localize them. And people sometimes told me, my physician sometimes gives me the feeling of this is not real, it's all in your head. And this is something that I found so frustrating because it's so important. So the pain is real. And what you have to say is that I think it's nice to transfer that from placebo research, because what we see there is that although you only swallow a sugar pill, the effects that you have are measurable, objectively measurable in your mind. So we have neurologically active parts. So it tells us that this dualism between mind and body is just too simple, right? That these two things interact with each other. And I think placebo shows us really nicely that it is there and it's measurably there, not only on a subjective level. And this is so important and so crucial.
So when you say it's measurable by like neurological activity in the brain?
Exactly.
Okay. All right. So that's comforting for people, right? Because I know so many people with chronic pain often are told that it's in their head because, it's such a subjective experience. But it is really good for them to hear. It can be measured. I mean, not that that's going to happen in every case, because who's going to do that? But it's just comforting to know this is real. It is real. It doesn't mean, even if it's a placebo or nocebo effect, what I'm experiencing is real. It's
exactly,
and it is measurable. Okay,
so you are the expert, right? Because you as a person are the expert because it's your reality, it's what you experience, so you know it best. I think this is also very much associated with that pain is real.
I want to get back to that little piece about the empowerment, but first of all, I just want to come back to what you said there about how we've kind of got this duality set up between the mind and body, but what you're saying is there is no separation. Can you go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I take example when you look at the placebo phenomenon, right? Placebo effect. So what happens is that, what would be a good example? I have to think about something. So when we give people, imagine we give them a very strong thing, an opioid. And we give this opioid, we give that once openly. So there is a physician, an injection with opioid, right? And you have, out of nothing, of course, you have this reduction of pain because opioid is so strong. And you have it instantly. So at this very moment of the injection. And then we compare that with a hidden injection of opioid. So we tell patients, look, in the next hour, we don't tell you when, but in the next hour, we will have this injection of opioid by this machine there. And what happens is that you have a very much reduced effect of the opioid, just because you don't know when exactly this is, in your body. And this shows you that what you think and what you believe is real, because it gives you really another effect on your body with something so strong as opioids. So in this experiment, there's not even a placebo included, but it's all about what you think, how much pain relief you have. And this is so fascinating. It shows you that it's not this linear, I take something, my body does X, Y, Z, and then I have this effect, but rather, yes, you have this thing. And of course, opioid is something very strong, and you can't eliminate the effect with your brain and your mind, but you can influence it. So usually I say placebo shows how much you can boost and influence something that is very real, but you can shape it. And this is just one example. There are many, many examples on how there is this interaction. Mhm.
That is so interesting. So, and it ties right into this idea of empowerment, right? That we have the power to influence the physical body with or without a medication. You know, we can change the effect of the medication, or we can also have effect to change even without a medication. So let's talk a little bit about that empowerment, because I don't think people, and I know this from my own experience, when you're in chronic pain, you don't feel very empowered. You don't think you're very empowered, right? I've since learned that, of course, we are empowered, but it's not like the first thing that pops into people's mind. But that's what we want to share with people today, based on, you know, your research, my experience, and people that I've worked with as well. We're seeing that we are not victims, right? We do have power. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So we talked about our book, right? That will the Nocebo Effect, and we have Wayne Jonas and Steve Berman in the book who have this whole chapter about what patients can do. So this is all about empowerment, right? To reduce the nocebo effect. And we also have a chapter about physicians and how they can, you know, really what they can do to minimize nocebo. So just to tell you that this is it, there are things that can be done, and this is of course in the line of empowerment. So basically, what happens is when you think of an appointment with a physician, we know from placebo and nocebo research that there are core elements. So what happens is first you have something like a verbal suggestion. So the physician is telling you, here's a painkiller. This is going to help you. And in a positive way, this makes you very, you know, positive. But the physician could also say, look, here's a pill. You can just try it. And try gives you the feeling of maybe it works, but maybe not. And this person is maybe not so convinced either. So this makes something with you. So the verbal suggestion, the narrative itself from the physician. Now you as a patient have, of course, when you know that, it gives you the ability of saying, on what do I want to focus on? So when the physician is a bit unsure, you can decide whether you take this unsureness or whether you say, look, and I can really give it a try. So, and that would make a difference, right? So this is the first thing. The second thing is what happens is that you have a ritual of swallowing a pill. Now, I think when you know that the ritual of swallowing a pill is important, maybe it's also the attitude when you swallow a pill of, oh, I do this very consciously. It's different of, I just do it, you know, by way. So this is a second thing where you can influence what is happening. And the third thing is that you have a patient-physician relationship. And this relationship can be very trust-based, very warm, very empathic. And if this is the case, it's of course empowering. But sometimes it is just not, which is of course very unfortunate, where you feel, yeah, as I said, maybe a physician who is giving you the feeling of it's all in your head, I can't do anything, oh, you again, or whatever. I think then as a patient, it's so important to give you, you know, the right of saying, I can choose a physician, I can search someone else, so I can really try to think of what do I need from a physician's side. So this is also because it matters. This is, I think, important to know. Yeah. So these core elements of relationship, expectations, and the rational, you can all shape that and influence that as a patient. And this is in the positive, but also in the negative part.
And I guess the education that we're interested in is not just like we're kind of here talking to like patients more than the physicians, but of course there's some education with physicians for them to understand the power of how they speak, how they the respect that they show or the caring that they show for the patient and their belief system and how that's affecting the patient. I remember, I think Lynn McTaggart has done some work on this as well, the power of the physician and their words that are spoken to the patients. So So how important is it then for a patient to have that relationship, a positive kind of relationship with their physician? And, if they don't, should they find someone else that they can? What have you seen there in the research?
So yeah, I come from the psychotherapy research mainly. I did a lot of psychotherapy research, and I also wrote this chapter in the book with Helen Köchlin together, where we look at nocebo effects in psychotherapy. We also have the example, by the way, of chronic pain in that chapter, and it's also about what I just said about the framing. And in psychotherapy, we see that about 40% is about the relationship. I mean, this is a large, it's much more important. The relationship, we call this alliance, is much more important than the method in psychotherapy. So whether you have someone, so when you have chronic pain, of course, sometimes we do cognitive behavior therapy, or we do an education program, or when I was once based in Plymouth, we did body reprogramming. So there are many different things where you can say different programs, and they are all important and crucial. But the thing is, it's not really the method of what they do, but it's rather more who is doing it and how much you feel that you can trust this person. So when we know that in psychotherapy, it's around 40%, I would say when you have a physician-based consultation, I would say it's rather the same amount of number in chronic pain, which is just huge. Yeah.
And how much do you talk about like trusting themselves? So there's a trusting relationship with the physician, but also with the person, like how can they trust themselves and how does that impact their perception and recovery from chronic pain?
Yeah. So this is very fascinating. I'm very interested in relationship networks as well. And the thing is that we know that loneliness is such a negative predictor for any kind of healthcare outcomes, right? So, and the thing is, what we see is when people are very well connected with friends, family, it's less important to have this very strong connection with with the therapist. But when you are lonely and you feel not understood, the more it is important to find a therapist who gives you the feeling of being trusted. So what I want to say with that, of course, when you trust yourself, this comes from somewhere. It comes from your previous experiences, maybe in your childhood, but also the feeling of I'm connected. So I think with placebo, we see over and over again how important that the fact that we are humans and that we have connections, this is key. Yeah, it's really key. And we talk of signaling theories. So we say when people have pain, this is actually adaptive to show that, because in very recent times, when you feel pain, you do, oh, right? So this is a signal for others to react on that and say, oh, look, this person is in pain, I have to help her or him. So it's actually an adaptive thing. It just becomes maladaptive when you experience that over and over again. So I think what you say, Jenny, is so important, right? How much do I trust myself? How much do I care about myself? And it's all about this being human, right? I'm connected with myself. I'm connected with others. I feel carried. Mm-hmm.
That's one reason why I started, a group program, was to teach people how to trust themselves in a community of people who were going through a similar thing, because it's very, very hard for anyone who doesn't have chronic pain to understand what the person with chronic, even when someone loves you. I mean, I've got a super supportive husband, but he still didn't really understand what I was going through. So actually, I built my community as much for me, as I was in my recovery, but also now I have no pain anymore, but just to help other people learn to trust themselves and understand the power that they have, and to do that in a community of supportive people, because we know that having a supportive community, it helps. Well, not having a supportive community can definitely increase chronic pain, right? Being alone, feel like to be alone. So, that's really interesting. Have you done any research into sources of chronic pain, like childhood trauma and that kind of thing, or is that not really your area?
So I did a lot of research in the field of chronic, we call this primary pain. This is not really trauma related, but it's a very interesting field and it somehow also relates to placebo. So when you have a broken leg and then you have to go to the physician and the physician can just fix that, right? Or when you have a surgery and afterwards you're in pain, it's somehow clear where the pain stems from and it's clear how to handle it. So there is clear etiology. And with chronic primary pain, it's not that there is no etiology, that would be completely wrong, but maybe we just don't know the etiology exactly, right? So there is this, it's much more complicated. And when I was in Plymouth, I learned about this very nice analogy of saying, imagine you have a computer and you have a hardware problem. This is very easy to fix, which is like chronic secondary pain, we call that, like the broken leg of the example before. But then you have chronic primary pain. And this is rather more a software problem where your computer goes crazy and your body goes crazy and the pain is real that you experience, but it's so hard you can't just quickly fix that. It's all connected. And this is a lot what I do at the moment to do chronic primary pain research and learn more about this very complex biopsychosocial interplay of what is happening there. And how we can support patients to learn more about their stop signals on when do I really need to rest, when do I need to take myself seriously, and when do I experience stop signals that tell me now you need a break.
No, you're...
So this is what I'm most interested in. I didn't do too much with trauma.
So what like messages of hope do you have for people with chronic pain in terms of self-empowerment and how they may use the nocebo or placebo effect, either one, to help them reduce the pain?
So I think what I have learned and see over and over again over all the years that I do placebo research now is that it's not about, of course it is about the pill and of course about the treatment that you do, but there's huge amounts of variance that is really about you and about what is your attitude, what are your prior experiences, how is your relationship with the physician. And this is something that you can influence as a patient. And this is something where I feel hope because I know this is something that the person can do. So this is why I talk about empowerment, right? It's about the idea of I can influence and shape that in the way that gives me a good feeling, in the way of that I feel like it's related to myself. But I think it's so important when I love the idea of empowerment and I really believe it, but I think it's so important that it's not about when something goes wrong and when you feel like it doesn't help me, although I was very positive, it's not your fault. I think it's so bad when you say placebo doesn't tell us just think positively and then it will go right? It's much more complex. There is, of course, patients can influence something, but then there is also the context. So, and to also acknowledge that things can be very hard. And I think this is also kind of something that I think is always important to also acknowledge. Yeah.
So do you have any like kind of takeaways for the person that's listening to this that is in chronic pain? What do you have any strategies that you might suggest for them in terms of empowering themselves?
Yeah. So when you're really in pain, I think one strategy is to find good places, to have a good physician where you feel trusted, to find others, as you said, Jane, right? When you gives you the feeling of I'm not alone and what happened is real. And then I think one very small example is when you take a pill, be aware that your attitude matters. Maybe make a reflection of, do I really want to take this pill? If not, skip it, if possible. If you feel like, yes, I want to do that, just be aware that your attitude towards that makes a difference and I think this is very important. And also to maybe go into a conversation with your physician. So if you feel like your physician is very skeptical or so, you can ask and say, you know what, I feel like I'm in pain. I feel like I need reassurance, and this is somehow missing here for me. So to go into conversation about what is happening to you.
Being an advocate for that side of the relationship. Right. So I think, we were talking about sort of and I know your research is in with medications, but I suppose this could be applied to really anything that you're doing to support yourself and your health. So a lot of people come to me, they've already tried, for example, doing an elimination diet, and they've got all these food fears. And the first thing I got to say is, you just need to feel good when you're eating, whatever you're eating, feel good. And I think that's the same with, sort of getting movement, for example. It's, if you're doing movement because someone's told you should move, but you're going the whole time, oh, this hurts, so having that feeling of, I'm going to do what's good for me, and I'm only going to do what feels good. And just staying in that state of feeling good will have an effect on really how you respond to that. Yeah.
There's a very fascinating study when you talk about movement in the placebo field.
Yeah.
Well, we see that when we talk people who clean in a hotel, we tell them, the work that you do is actually very good for your body. It gives you a lot of health. And compared to a group where we just say you do cleaning and this is it. And we see that the group is informed that what they do is actually exercise and will have a good effect on their body, that they lose weight, that they feel much more empowered, that they feel like, so it has a really objective outcome on their body. So I think what you say is completely right. So what placebo tells me is that placebo is not only the pill, but it's in every action that you do, this add on, right? It matters what you do. And maybe it goes into the same direction of what you say of when you do something, be aware of your attitude. And if you feel this is not good for you, or you overgo a boundary, or you don't listen to your stop signals, skip it. So
that's a fascinating study, Cosima. I think I've heard about them before, and just really highlights the power of our attitudes toward things and our thoughts towards something that we're doing, and how we can have that physiological impact as a result of that. So tell us a little bit more about the book that you've co-authored, the Nocebo Effect When Words Make You Sick. Can you tell us a bit more about the book?
Yeah, of course. So I'm co-editor of the book together with my wonderful colleagues, Charlotte Blees, Michael Bernstein, and Walter Brown. And we have what we did is, we had this brilliant, Michael was very initiative, and he had this brilliant idea of, going into nocebo, the negative counterpart, because when we talk of empowerment, of course, it's also about reflections on what can go wrong and what can I do there. And we had so nice meetings, the four of us, many editor meetings, Zoom meetings that were, I think, more and more getting very, like feeling a bit like a family or so coming together again. And we were thinking, who are really the experts when it comes to nocebo? And we are so proud that we could really invite people who are really good placebo, nocebo researchers. And we made this collection of different chapters, and just we go from very basics of what actually is a nocebo effect, what are mechanisms. Also, Charlotte Pieces did ethical reflections on what does it actually mean. So we have always, of course, this difficulty between we should inform patients about what is going on. They have a right of information, right? Autonomy, so to be informed about negative effects and side effects. And on the other hand, we have this that we should minimize harm, right? By, of course, having a positive attitude and not a negative attitude. So she makes brilliant reflections about the nocebo effect. And then we go on and going really practical of what can physicians do? What can patients do? What does it mean, for example, as I said, in psychotherapy? So we go more and more into the practical field. We also have the vaccine as a very topical example. And I think it's just a great inspiration, not only for patients, but also physicians and researchers. Yeah. And the book will be released in March, I think the 19th of March. And we are so excited about it. Yeah, exactly. And you can find it on Amazon already in pre-order.
And we'll have the link in the show notes so people can pre-order it. So you mentioned the vaccines. So what did the research find with the placebo-nocebo effect with the vaccine?
So with vaccine, it was also very fascinating. So there are studies that show that when you have this COVID vaccine group where people are vaccinated with, the real stuff of COVID and vaccination. And then we have a control group where people actually are vaccinated with placebo. So saline fluid. And then you compare that. And what you compare are not the effects of the vaccination on your COVID symptoms, but rather more on the experience of negative side effects, right? And we can see that the vast majority of side effects is due to nocebo because you expect to get negative side effects. So people in the placebo vaccine group have so many similar side effects when compared to the real vaccine group. And I think it's a wonderful example because it shows how much, it is somehow embedded within the media. So we have, can you remember? I'm so luckily these times are now gone, right? We are lucky that. But can you remember you just had to open a newspaper and this was all about the negative effects of vaccination. So these are, of course, negative expectations also. And we also have this wonderful chapter about media in our book where there are so fascinating results of what happens when something is in the media. Of course, it's a very strong voice in our society. Yeah.
That's so interesting. And I think using that as a way for people to understand the power of nocebo effect is really interesting because we all lived through that. There was so much polarization and so much talk. As you said, you couldn't even avoid hearing, about the side effects. And so to hear that in a study, people who had a placebo were also having those effects through the nocebo effect is kind of eye-opening for people to realize, wow, there's something to this. That's interesting because so even things like fevers, where you've seen people having fevers when they had a placebo.
Yeah, so that can be very strong effects. Someone was even thinking that a long time ago, it's just a case report. So, but it's anyway, it's just it visualizes nicely what is going on. So this person was trying to kill himself and just swallowing a lot of pills that he was given by a study. And then afterwards in hospital, it turned out that actually these were all placebos. He showed all the symptoms that come along with being very near to death. So it can be very dramatic what happens when we really believe that something bad is happening to us.
Yeah.
And I think, again, when we talk about empowerment, so when we think about negative side effects, one way a very practical way would be that your physician asks you, how much do you want to know about negative effects? Because there is this phenomenon nocebo, and it will have a negative impact. And I'm very open. I can be very transparent. Of course, you have a right, and this is also important. But how much do you really want to know? Because it will have an impact. And I think this is it's so important that the patient can start to decide, right? And maybe say, you know what? Just give me the most important negative effects, and all the other things I will, for the sake of, not having so many side effects, just ignore.
I think probably having Google, the ability to
That's true. Yeah.
that's probably having that nocebo effect on people, right? Because if you start researching, in which anyone can do, side effects of whatever, or even symptoms of, right, that they're going to start having those symptoms or having those side effects because they've read and that it's possible or likely. It's so fascinating. It must be so fun to research this.
Yeah, it's really fun, and I have so good colleagues, which makes it more fun. This was also with the book. It made a lot of fun because we had good people in it, and we were a very cool team of editors, and that makes again, it's the same, right? It makes all the difference. Yeah.
Really? Yeah. Okay, Cosima, I always asked, what's one thing that someone could do today? Because this show is about intentional living, right? Being empowered. But I also like baby steps. So, what would you suggest is something that someone could do today that's going to begin to allow their body to release the chronic pain?
Yeah. So today, a mini step that I would say, if you decided on taking a pill, a painkiller, wait every time during maybe tomorrow when you swallow that pill, be aware that your attitude when you swallow it really matters. So look at the pill and decide, do I really want to swallow that pill? And if you decide for yes, then take it and be very aware of having it on your tongue, how you swallow it with water. And then maybe just sit, 2 or 3 seconds or whatever, and think about the positive things that it will give to you and the positive expectations that you have. And maybe try to not focus on the negative expectations when you decided to take it. I think this is the prerequisite, right? And then think about, maybe you have one explanation or one situation in your head where it really helped you. Think about that and then go on.
Oh, that's so interesting. So thank you for that. So we'll the audience, if you are taking any medications, or actually I would say even apply it to other things as well, your attitude while that happens, while that's going on, is going to influence how your body responds. So a great piece of advice, especially coming from all the research that you've done. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. So the book is going to be available on Amazon. So you can go ahead and pre-order it. We will have the links there. And I just thank you so much for being a guest today, Cosima, and also for just this body of work and sharing it and putting it together in this book for people. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jay. That was really nice that you invited me. It was great talk.
And to people watching and listening, hasn't this been fascinating to learn how your thoughts can influence how your body responds to the pill that you're taking, or whatever it is you're doing? So you do have a lot of power, and that's really the underlying message that we have here for you, that you are the empowered one. And so I hope you found this super helpful. Please leave a review or a comment to let us know what you thought. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, please share this with them. All right, we'll see you again soon.